23 years ago, I was on this campus, but I didn't come the usual way. 23 years ago, I was court-ordered by a federal judge to come here. 23 years ago, I was facing 30 years in prison, and a federal judge court-ordered me to come to ORU University. You say, Pastor Michael, how in the world did that happen? Well, I'll tell you about it. You see, I am a fourth-generation preacher standing before you. My father was a great man of God, and at the age of 12 years old, he passed away. I was 12, and he died, and I couldn't understand why. And for years, I harbored an anger against the Lord because seemingly to me, a 12-year-old, he took my father away. And so at that point in time, I hated God and I hated church and wanted nothing to do with it. I was an athlete, though, and because of my athleticism, it allowed me to be able to go on to college and get a scholarship to a Division I university. And I thought this was going to be my life. But it would just happen that on one night, coming home for a weekend, my brother-in-law got into kind of a stupor, fell asleep behind a wheel, and I woke up in the hospital. The car wreck was so massive and so violent that my lower torso was stuck underneath of the dash while my upper torso went through the windshield. I only got this picture after I was waking in the hospital and came to, and they showed me the pictures of the event, and so I really shouldn't be standing here in front of you. Because of that, I became an alcoholic and began to drink a lot and began to smoke a lot of weed. I know you guys don't have that problem down here. And yeah, we're gonna get there in just a second. Yeah, and I began to drink a lot and smoke a lot of weed, and my outcomes that I was looking for in life and my options weren't many. And because of that, I decided to allow the streets to become my sanctuary and for drug dealers to become my pastors. And I was a very good student, and I learned the trade. And at the age of 18 years old, my friends and I had set up an enterprise in East Baltimore known as Schoolhouse Rocks, and we were rocking and rolling. And then by the age of 19, the federal officers kicked my mom's door in and raided her home looking for little old moi. And they came looking for me, and so I turned myself in. And because I told myself, well, you're not a violent offender, you haven't really hurt anybody, and you'll probably just get a little bit of time in probation. And when they took me in and locked me up and put me in a 23/7 cell, which means that you can only come out for an hour a day, 23 hours, 7 days a week. You can only come out an hour a day. And they put me in this little room, and they kept me in there for several days. And then on a Sunday of all days, they come and get me out, and they take the handcuffs off me, put me in the paddy wagon van, and they send me off to the courthouse. I'm thinking to myself, this is crazy because it's a Sunday, so I really must be in trouble. And what happened was that my lawyer got an audience with this judge because he went back to my house and went into the box of letters that I had of all the colleges and universities that I had scholarships to and could attend. And he took one of those schools out of the box with a letter attached to it and presented it to the judge and said, this young man doesn't belong in prison. When I got into the judge's chamber, the judge looked at me and he asked me a question. He had said, son, do you want to go to jail or do you want to go to school? And I said to myself, let's see. I want to go to school. I don't want to go to jail. And he looked at me and says, I have here on my desk a letter from a guy by the name of Bill Owens, who had a ministry called Give Me a Chance, who was in partnership with ORU University and this basketball coach that's there. And they're saying that they're going to allow you to go to ORU University. And at the time, I wanted to look at my lawyer and say, that's the letter you got out of the box, out of all of the schools you could have got. But I was too happy to say anything. And he says, son, I never want to see you again. You don't belong in jail. This is not your destiny. And the judge looked at me and said, I believe God has a great call and a great purpose on your life. And I'm going to give you an opportunity. And I never want to see you again. That night, I was on the campus of Oral Roberts University that night. But when I got here, I was not comfortable in my own skin. I did not fit in. I did not belong. I wasn't a Christian yet. I wasn't saved. I could not have told you the difference between the apostles and the epistles. I thought the epistles were the wives of the apostles. I could not find a text. I could not find a scripture. I did not know the songs. And yes, I grew up in church my entire life, right on a pew, but I could not tell you what the Bible said. I had no relationship with God for myself. And when I got here, I went right back to doing the same things I was doing in Baltimore, because you can change your location, but until you change your heart, nothing is going to change. And when I got to the campus of Oral Roberts University, I had this nickname. You want to know what my nickname was on campus? You acting like you don't want to know. Do you want to know what my nickname? Just nod your head. Just nod your head. Yeah, I was called the Demon Seed. Yeah, I was the guy that they said, don't get around this dude. If you get around this dude, he's going to have you smoking and drinking. And the fact of the matter is that I never really asked anybody to do anything. Just because I was doing it, other people joined in. It got real quiet in here real quick. And that was my nickname, and not because it was malicious and not because it was mean. It's because of my actions and who I was at the time. And I'll never forget because I got to make this sweet and simple. I'll never forget they had a mandatory spring revival, and you had to go. And I was so mad that I had to go to this revival. I mean, I was furious that I had to go to these revival services. So I looked at one of my friends. I said, look, if I got to go to this revival, I'm going to get as drunk and I'm going to get as high as I possibly can. So I went to the liquor store and I got a fifth of Grey Goose vodka. I know you don't know what that is. I got a fifth of Grey Goose vodka, and I rolled 5 blunts. I know you don't know what that is either. And I smoked all of them by myself, and I drank the whole fifth of vodka all by myself. And then I came to chapel service. I was sitting right there on the edge of the third row. I'll never forget it. And all of a sudden, worship goes up, and it was kind of a who's who of preachers on the platform. Didn't quite look like this, like it looks right now. And Christians are doing what Christians do. They're praising and worshiping God. And I'm sitting there high, slumped over, laughing and geeking off of the weed and laughing and having a merry good time off of the alcohol. But then all of a sudden, something happened on the inside of me as they were singing, "How Great Thou Art." The laughs turned to tears, and I started crying, and the English that I was trying to speak started to sound like a language that I did not know of. And right there on the third row, I was baptized and filled with the Holy Ghost with no altar call, nobody bringing me to the front, just God loving on me right where I was in that stupor. I got so afraid of what it was that I ran out of the auditorium. Literally, while worship was going on, my wife was sitting somewhere back over in that way. She was my girlfriend at the time, and because she wasn't supposed to be dating me, because they told her, don't date that dude. They didn't say nothing. And I was sitting right there about right on the third row, and I ran right up that aisle back to my dorm room over at EMR. And I went to my dorm room, and I shut the door, and I'm crying, and I'm speaking in tongues, and I don't know what's going on. And I called my mom, but I couldn't speak English. I could only speak tongues. And so she heard gibberish. She didn't, and so she hung up on me. That's crazy. That's crazy. She hung up on me, and when she hung up on me, she simply said, "Son, God is dealing with you. That's all that you need to know." And the next voice I heard was the voice that changed my life forever. And it was the voice of the true and living God that said, "You ran long enough, and I've ordained you to be a prophet to the nations. And this is your time of preparation. This is your time of power. This is your time of purpose. And this is your time of promise." And my life was changed forever. When I came out of the dorm room, my RA knocked on the door. Kenny, I'll never forget. He knocked on the door. He wanted to check on me. They thought I OD'd in the room. They thought I overdosed. I never did no heavy drugs, so I don't know why they thought I overdosed. It was just weed, man. They thought I overdosed. And because they thought I overdose. They were checking on me to see if I was all right. And Kenny knocked on the door, and I opened the door. I said, what's going on? He says, oh, you okay? I said, I'm fine. He says, your face and your countenance has changed. What's happening? Are you sick? What happened? I said, I'm fine. What's going on? I said, why are you looking like that, like something's wrong? He says, dude, you've been in there for 3 days. You've been locked in this room for 3 days. God had me locked away for 3 days. And in those 3 days, he showed me the vision for my life. He showed me what I was called to do. He showed me it right in this place.